Syria, Israeli troops begin a process of forced displacements in several villages of the south of the country. The Mexican Chamber of Deputies approved on Wednesday 9.3 trillion pesos equal to 442.7 billion euros for the 2025 federal budget. Caracas hosts the 25th edition of the World Forum of Special Economic Zones. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the Telesur headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Syria, Israeli troops begin a process of forced displacements in several villages in the south of the country. The Israeli army stormed the central camp of Kineitra with tanks and infantry groups. During the illegal incursion, the Israeli forces razed several houses, confiscated weapons, and blew up a Syrian military site located in the town of Al-Raf. Meanwhile, the United Nations announced that the Zionists are obstructing the work of the peacekeeping forces in the occupying Golan Heights. The Israeli occupying forces announced the seizure of several tanks and armaments of the Syrian armed forces while they were taking over the demilitarized area in Syria. The Zionist forces further specified having seized many mines, explosive and anti-tanks missiles from a former post of the Syrian army, which they claim was out of use following orders from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to occupy the demilitarized zones and its nearby areas. In this regard, several countries fully condemned the presence of the foreign military in Syria, claiming it violates not only the sovereignty of the nation but also the United Nations resolution taking advantage of the terrorist offensive on the country. The Interior Minister of Austria, Hergar Karner, presented on Wednesday a plan of actions to the National Council for the Repatriating Syrian Citizens. The minister argued that after the overthrow of President Bashar al-Assad, the repatriation process might be progressive and orderly. Furthermore, Karner highlighted the government will reward with certain benefits those willing to return voluntarily. The Austrian policy joins similar ones announced by other European countries, which stipulates the suspension of processing asylum requests from Syrians. European governments state the measures are due to the fact that Syria is under the control of a recognized al-Qaeda terrorist group, remarking some of its members face severe sentences. Moving on, Israeli swarm drones hit the Gaza Strip on Thursday, claiming 35 civilian lives. These latest Zionist crimes increased the Palestinian death toll to 44,805. Precisely, Israeli airstrikes have targeted Nusra refugee camp in the west of the Strip, massacring 15 people. While in southern Gaza, Rafah City, the genocidal forces attacked a humanitarian convoy tasked with distributing food and water in the area, causing 13 deaths. In addition, the Tel Aviv forces struck residential buildings north of the Gaza Strip.
This house was targeted. This tower belongs to the Al-Malash family, but it is housing a large number of displaced people on account that this area is inhabited by a large figure of displaced people. Israeli warplanes targeted the upper floor of the tower. As a result, there are a large number of injured who have been transferred to the Baptist Al-Ali Medical Hospital, while we have found 5 deaths so far.
The Irish government confirmed on Thursday to intervene in South Africa's International Court of Justice case against Israel under the genocide conviction by filing a lawsuit later this month. The Taniste and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Defense Michael Martin secured that the government will request the court to broaden its comprehension scope of what constitutes the commission of genocide. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry praised such a governmental decision, which it describes as an example of commitment to justice and international rule of law. Likewise, the Palestinian office stated that such appeals evidence the deep Irish solidarity and the historical amicable relations between the two nations. Let's take a very short break, but remember you can join us on our TikTok account as Telesur English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. The Mexican Chamber of Deputies approved on Wednesday 9.3 trillion pesos, equal to 442.7 billion euros for the 2025 federal budget. After over 4 hours of debate, legislators passed the first budget of Sheinbaum's government with 349 votes in favor and 129 against, registering no abstentions. The spending plan of executive will be fundamentally allocated to social programs. In this regard, the president of the Finance Commission of the legislature, Marilyn Gomez Pozos, assured that the regulations prioritizes economic growth, shared prosperity, economic stability, and public finances.
The electronic voting system and the digital platform are closed. Mr. President, counting up 348 votes in favor, 129 against, and 0 abstentions.
Could you update the datum again?
349 ballots in favor, 129 against, and 0 abstentions.
The federal budget for public expenditures was approved in general and in particular by 349 votes, which is a public notice.
In Colombia, on Wednesday, the Economic Commission of the Senate and the House of Representatives voted against the financing bill proposed by the government of President Gustavo Petro. The bill, which began its processing on Wednesday after several days of delay, was supposed to guarantee close to 12 trillion pesos at little more than $2,700 million for sustainable economic reactivation, adaptation to climate change, and sustainable development within the framework of fiscal sustainability and new tools to strengthen the control and operation of the tax system. In this regard, President Petro assured via his social network that the decision is a hard blow against the people, while the Minister of the Interior assured that a sensible discussion of the norm was not allowed.
The regrettable thing about today's decision is that a discussion was not allowed, and we had urged the benches, the members of the third and fourth commissions, to open the debate and to discuss point by point the advance payment of the fiscal rule, because taxes and gambling were excluded in the report. We wanted to discuss each one of the points of the reform, and there was no opportunity to discuss them, to move forward in that debate. It seems to me that there was a haste on the part of the commissions in not allowing the debate. I believe that the country deserved that debate.
And still in Colombia, where the bid-in for the minimum wage increase has started, some unions have already stated their percentage, which is far from the proposal of the worker represented in the Central Labor Union. Let's see more in the following material.
As usual for this month, the Central Labor, trade unions, industrial organizations, and government meet to discuss the increase in the minimum wage for workers in the country. The Colombian Association of Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises initially put on the table its proposal of 5%, a figure that could be approaching the other unions. However, they did not give their proposal and left in the hands of the Ministry of Labor and the government the evolution of the table of consultation.
El gran interés que nosotros tenemos es el de lograr una
The
concertación
great
este año.
interest that we have is to
Algunas
reach an
personas preguntan
agreement
por qué
this
no hemos
year.
dado una cifra, y
Some
la razón
people
por la
ask
cual
us
no
why
la
we
hemos
have
dado
not given a number,
realmente
and the
que
reason why we
la
have not given it
probabilidad de
is because we
concertación
really
se
believe that the probability of agreement increases a lot if we allow the government to play the role of intermediary or conciliator in the middle of this tripartite work. As it happened in the year 2022 and in the year 2023, we almost succeeded in achieving it.
2022 y en el año 2023 casi lo logramos también.
For their part, the workers, who were members of and represented by the National Unitary Command, assured that the initiative of the small businessmen is illegal, since it does not take into account other indicators, only the inflation index. They proposed a two-digit increase and made a series of suggestions with measures to maintain the purchasing power of the workers and thinking of the increases that are coming next year.
Que se revise los temas de los cánones de arrendamiento.
We need a
en
review
vivienda.
of the housing rental
Segundo,
rates,
que se
that the
revisen
increases of
los
products regulated by the
incrementos de los
state be
productos
reviewed,
regulados por el
so
Estado
that they are
para
never
que nunca
higher
sean
than
superiores a la
inflation,
inflación.
that the proposals of the
Tercero,
pensioners be
que se
considered,
miren exactamente
so
las
that the
propuestas
pension
de los
allowance is
pensionados
equal
en
to the
materia
minimum
de
wage,
que la mesada
and that
pensional
the
sea
health
con el salario
contribution
mínimo,
is
que
reduced,
exista la mesada
as well
14,
as the contribution to the
adicionalmente se
family
le reduzca
compensation funds.
tanto, la cotización en salud como la cotización para las cajas de compensación familiar. Cuarto, que se reduzca
That the Bank of the
significativamente las
Republic's
tasas de
interest
interés
rates
del
be
Banco de la
significantly
República,
reduced
porque han sido
because they
un
have been a
freno de
brake
mano a
on
la reactivación
economic
económica.
reactivation,
Quinto,
that financial
que se
expenses be
revisen los
reviewed,
costos
and that the
de
minimum
los,
wage
los
increase
costos
for
financieros.
2025 be
Y sexto, que el
12%.
incremento del salario mínimo para el 2025 sea del 12%.
In this context, what expectations do ordinary citizens have regarding these negotiations and their results?
It is not enough for a person who earns the minimum wage, and even more so for a person who pays rent, who has a family. They always raise it very little, and then they raise the public transportation. So no, it must be something that allows one as a Colombian to be able to subsist.
Perhaps in a middle ground between what the private sector and the workers' union are asking for, because it is really necessary for all people to have access to a better quality of life. That is the idea.
The key data for the discussion of the minimum wage are inflation, which is 5.2%, the contribution of wages to GDP, which is 2%, and productivity, which ranges between 1.73% and 3.43%. The first deadline is December 15th to reach a consensus on the minimum wage increase, where for the moment the parties seem to be distant. The deadline is December 30th. Otherwise, it will be signed by decree.
The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken reaffirmed there will be no change in the U.S. current policy towards Cuba before the end of Biden administration. Blinken stated before the House Foreign Affairs Committee that Cuba will not be removed from the state's sponsoring terrorism list, despite acknowledging that the nation does not finance nor promote such as scourge. In this regard, the U.S. Secretary of State certified that both his office and his government disregarded the demand of over 120 governments not to consider Cuba as a nation sponsoring terrorism. By adopting such stance, the authority is completing his term with one of the worst ratings ever in history. Let's take our last break, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at Telesur English, where you'll be able to watch on interviews, sub stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit subscribe button and active the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Un financial break, don't go away. Welcome back. The Brazilian government urged the international community to support Haiti in view of the violence wave in the country. The Brazilian Foreign Ministry asked for countries to support the interim government efforts to ensure public safety, economic development, and social peace in the Caribbean nation. The ministry's statements come in reaction to a massacre that left on Sunday over 189 deaths. The incident occurred in a town of Port-au-Prince, capital, where members of a criminal group massacred nearly 200 elderly. And also in Brazil, doctors describes as successful the procedure performed on Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva intended to prevent a cranial hemorrhage. The doctors at the Syrian Lebanese hospital where the operation was performed assured that the president is stable and is expected to make a speedy recovery. According to the medical team, the head of state should return to Brazil at the beginning of next week. Furthermore, they also point out that the president is forbidden by medical order to receive working visitors at the hospital. Caracas hosts the 25th edition of the World Forum of Special Economic Zones with the participation of international guests focused on the transition to new economic models. In this context, this Thursday, Chinese economic experts will discuss about the Belt and Road Initiative and will share their experiences with the Venezuelan delegations. During the meeting, both parties will focus on the strengthening of the industrial innovation between Beijing and Caracas.
The Foreign Trade Agency, the promoter that what is done in Venezuela is the best, the country brand Venezuela. It is a strategy that is concatenated. It is a strategy that has a very concrete sense of developing a country in an environment that you know very well, that has an illegitimate blockade, a criminal blockade against Venezuela that has sought to torture the body of the national economy, that has sought to torture and suffocate Venezuela in terms of income and of foreign currency.
Also, the Minister of Communes and Social Movements, Angel Prado, announced that judges of peace to be elected on Sunday will be in charge of enforcing communal justice in the country. The minister provided the emblematic 23 de Enero parish examples of such communes in Caracas, Venezuela, accounts with vulnerable candidates for the elections to be held on December the 15th. It is worth noting that the Ministry of the Communes, in conjunction with the Supreme Court of Justice, will be responsible for providing a special training to over 30,000 justices. In this regard, Prado remarked that those trained justices will do justice to ourselves as they will cope with our problems, grounded in they are part of communes who love their communes, noting that only the people saves the people. And for 20 years, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of the Americas Peoples Trade Treaty, ALBA TCP, has benefited millions of people in Latin America and the Caribbean with several social programs. Let's review some of its achievements in the framework of its anniversary.
In education, ALBA TCP reached a historic milestone by making more than 4,980,000 people in Latin America literate. Countries such as Venezuela, Bolivia, and Nicaragua were declared illiteracy-free territories. With the creation of Misión Milagro in 2004, promoted by commanders Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro, over 7 million people in the region have had free treatment for ocular pathologies, while 40 million have received corrective lenses for vision. Central America is among the ones that benefit from Misión Milagro, with almost 500,000 people who had surgery. 11,900 Mexicans also benefit from this program. In the Caribbean, more than 1,300,000 people underwent eye surgery. In South America, over 4,200,000 citizens underwent surgery for eye conditions. The creation of PetroCaribe in 2004 within the framework of ALBA TCP led to multilateral cooperation between Caribbean countries and Venezuela, an alliance that allowed the purchase of Venezuelan oil under preferential payment conditions and the financing for the construction of tankers, oil pipelines, and hydropower plants in the Caribbean. Given the suspension of PetroCaribe in 2019 due to US sanctions against Venezuela, ALBA TCP member countries pledged a developed plan to relaunch this international bloc. During 2 decades, the Bolivarian Alliance has not only developed social programs in the areas of health, education, and energy, but has also created opportunities for cooperation in sports, and more than 10,000 athletes have participated in several ALBA TCP games.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English and from the south of Marrero, thank you for watching.